Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Kerim Sener, who's the managing director of Ariana Resources, who are a AIM-listed gold exploration and development company focused on epithermal gold, silver, and porphyry copper gold deposits in Turkey, plus other jurisdictions as well. Kerim is an experienced exploration geologist within the junior mining space and has worked in Australia, Europe, Africa, and North America during his career. And he's here today to give us an update on Ariana Resources and everything they've been getting up to. So that's welcome, Kerim, to the podcast. How you doing, Kerim?
Very well, thank you, Rob. Great to join you.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. So, how we start these podcasts off. Just wondering if you can give us a little bit about yourself, about your career, about your background, and then we go into speaking about the company.
Absolutely. So I started off as a geologist, did my first degree in the UK, followed up by a master's at Imperial College, went off to work in Zimbabwe for the early part of my career, down a gold mine in the north part of the country, as well as involved in some of the gold exploration projects that they had at that time. It was work that we were doing for Lonmin PLC. I then had the opportunity to move to Australia, to Perth, to study for a PhD at the University of Western Australia, which I completed in the early 2000s. And it was in the later stages of my PhD that I got involved in establishing Ariana Resources as it's now become.
Okay, I want to just give our audience an overview of Ariana Resources, and also outline the business model, strategy, and obviously overview of its assets within the company.
Absolutely. So Ariana started off with a Turkish focus, as you've alluded to. One of the reasons for that, in fact, was my own background. The funny name is a Turkish name. I was born in Turkey. My father's Turkish. I speak the language fluently, although obviously you can tell from my accent that I spent most of my life in the UK. So Turkey was always a natural fit for the company, certainly in its formational years. We acquired the very first exploration properties, largely in Western Turkey in early 2004. We listed the company on AIM midway through 2005, and we've been progressing that portfolio of assets, added to that in the form of the Kiziltepe project, which we acquired from Newmont, and that was a deal we completed in 2005. That was joined later by the Tavsan asset in 2008, which we acquired from Odyssey Resources. But we've also gone on to identify and explore our own assets, including the Salinbas discovery, which we briefly partnered with European Goldfields, latterly Eldorado, up until 2016. But it's now part of an expanded joint venture with Prosia Construction and Azalton Holdings. We can talk about that in a bit more detail later, perhaps.
You've recently announced that construction at Tavsan is progressing as well as planned. What are the next steps for the actual project?
Yeah, so Tavsan construction started in July of this year. It's going very well indeed. The progress is quite impressive to see on the ground. There's obviously a lot more work to do. We're currently targeting a Q3 of next year for first mining. We should hit that target as long as there are no issues with the supply chain. Obviously, supply chains globally are fairly strained at the moment, but fingers crossed. In terms of general progress, we're very satisfied. So hopefully, all the other pieces fall into place. In terms of next steps, we're actually working on finalising the next iteration of the mineral resource estimate. That shouldn't be too far off now. But we have also commenced a new drilling program on Tavsan, which will form the backbone of a further update to the mineral resource that we'd announce sometime during the course of next year. And those resource estimates are obviously an important part of keeping our feasibility studies up to date as we continue the finalisation of the project build.
Again, the company have also announced the drilling program at Salinbas, which has been significantly extended. I just wonder if you can tell us why this has been extended, and what shareholders should be looking for in terms of news flow.
Yeah, so about this time last year, we announced a 2,300 meter initial drilling program at Salinbas, funded by those funds that were made available to the project company by Özaltın Holding when they acquired a significant stake, 53% in that project company. So they kicked in $8 million into that entity, and we're utilizing those funds for the drilling program as well as other studies, including the environmental impact assessment. But that initial program was limited by forestry permits and the limitations imposed on us by those forestry permits. But as we announced earlier this year, we received the forestry permits that we were expecting at Salinbas itself, at Ardalı, the porphyry copper gold adjacent to Salinbas, as well as at the Hazarlı prospect to the south. So we've now got all the permits in place necessary to continue that drilling program. And the drilling program had a very slow start, drilling in very bad conditions. The weather was very poor in the early part of this year, but we've certainly picked up speed now over well over 6,000 meters of drilling. And we've taken the decision as the project company to continue that program of work, and are now adding a second drilling rig to continue work across all of those prospects. So we're actually planning to drill well into 2023 and possibly beyond. The intention is to just keep going.
One of the biggest milestones for Ariana's Resources history must be getting, and remind me how to pronounce this, Kiziltepe mine in Turkey. That's it.
Yes.
Mine in Turkey into production. What are the significant milestones ahead of you for that mine?
Yeah, so absolutely true. Kiziltepe was a huge milestone for the company because we made the successful transition that few make in our space from pure exploration into production. And we were able to do that in part with the support that we'd received from Presea Construction, our original and still ongoing joint venture partner. And they've been a phenomenal partner to have. They brought in all their expertise in terms of the metallurgy, the processing plant, design, and all those capabilities that surround them in the construction space. So they were absolutely instrumental in getting the mine built and acting as the venture manager. Their expertise really spans several continents. They've built gold and silver processing plants everywhere, pretty much, and they've got a great team behind them. So they also kicked in $8 million themselves into the process of getting Kiziltepe through feasibility, environmental impact assessment, permitting, and so on. And eventually we got Kiziltepe into production in 2017. And there were lots of challenges along the way. And with Presea, with their team, we were able to navigate all of those very successfully. So we feel that we've learned a lot from that process, and we're applying all of that knowledge collectively now to the development of the Tavsan mine. And as I said a little earlier, the Tavsan mine build is going very well, and actually, our feeling is more smoothly than where we were in this stage of the Kiziltepe mine build. So that's a sort of general overview of Kiziltepe and indeed Tavsan and where we stand. But more precisely for your question, in terms of Kiziltepe next steps, we've actually got a drilling program underway at the moment at Kiziltepe. We've drilled over 11,000 meters currently in the current year, and that followed on from a very substantial, just shy of 15,000 meter drilling program during last year. Those drilling programs are informing further resource estimate updates. We provided one earlier on this year. We're planning to provide further updates to that during the course of next year. And coupled with that, further updates to our reserve base, so that we can define the future lifespan of Kiziltepe itself. I should also note here that we're not entirely limited to Kiziltepe itself. Yes, the processing plant is located there, but there are a number of other prospects in the vicinity, such as at Kepez, where we have actually been mining recently, but we're looking to expand that potentially. Karakavak, further to the northeast, and even further to the northeast of that prospect, we also have the Kızılçukur project. And so there are a number of satellite projects or prospects that we're expecting to continue building out that resource and indeed hopefully reserve base, so that we can continue supplying the mill at Kızıltepe with feed in the years ahead.
How have you found operating in Turkey as a mining jurisdiction? And I suppose for our audience that may not necessarily be familiar with mining in Turkey, just wondering if you just give us an overview of the Turkey as a jurisdiction.
Well, Turkey really has been a fantastic jurisdiction, certainly for us, and indeed for others. It's notable that of all the countries in Europe, and including Turkey in Europe, Turkey really has performed amazingly. We now have 17 active gold mines in the country, whereas 20 years ago there was barely one. And the Turkish government has been very supportive through that time. We have had a number of iterations to the mining law. Some of the later iterations have added complexity. So I would say that perhaps it's a little less straightforward for new entrants today. However, when we got started in 2004, that coincided with the first major change to the mining law that really enabled the whole sector, mining sector generally, but also the gold sector specifically, to blossom. So Turkey is the largest gold producer in Europe currently, and it's one of the largest gold producers in the world, in fact. So there's a lot of potential there. A lot of the country remains underexplored. We have not a huge amount of competition. We're actually the only British or AIM-listed company that's actively exploring in Turkey now, whereas when we started, or near enough when we started, we were one of three. There used to be many more Canadian and some Australian companies operating in the country. They've all fallen away. So we're still going strong. And I think a large part of that is down to our team. We're very much an embedded team. We believe in the team, we believe in the geological opportunity, and we believe in the country. We strongly feel that, and we feel that we have a lot to add.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the team, and obviously the team that's obviously got expertise in Turkey?
Yes. So on our side, so specifically Ariana, we have a full geoscientific complement. So it's headed up by a very experienced exploration manager who's operated throughout the country in a whole variety of different geological settings. He started his early career with Teck, in fact, in the country. So we're very pleased to have Berkin Uğurlu as our exploration manager. He's supported by a very broad-based team, including geochemists. So we have 2 geochemists. We have a geophysicist in-house. We have a GIS database manager full-time. We have resource specialists. Our resource specialists are based in the UK. And I should also add remote sensing specialization as well, which is something that we developed very early on in our lifetime as an exploration company, but it's something that we're continuing to develop, and it's actually a very important part of our future exploration program. So we really our capabilities are spread across the full range of geoscientific disciplines that are useful in our sector. On the JV side, so to speak, obviously we have, again, a very full team, backed up by the geologists and the resource geologists in particular, but all the processing expertise, the metallurgists, the plant operators, the mining engineers, as well as the construction teams that are busy at work at Tavsan currently. So really, we can go from grassroots exploration all the way through to pouring concrete and having a gold and silver mine operating. That's the capability that we're talking about.
What have you learned as, and I suppose yourself and as the company, what have you learned from getting Kerim Sener into production that will obviously assist you with developments in Tavsan and Salinbas?
Well, I think the most important lesson to take away is patience. It's very important at a local level to exercise patience. There are negotiations that have to be had at some point in the process when it comes to landholder access, when it comes to dealing with issues like forestry permitting, whether it's at the local level or whether it's at the government level. There are always going to be hurdles. We operate in an industry that there's a natural sort of sensitivity to mining, and we understand that fully. But at the end of the day, mining is something that civilization requires, and we just have to go through a very careful process, a patient process of educating people in the most appropriate way to demonstrate that what we're doing as a business, as an industry, is beneficial for them, for the environment, and so on. And you can't rush these things. It really does require a fair degree of understanding, really, developing mutual understanding, seeing where the other parties are coming from, recognizing what their desires are, their fears, and working through that.
Regarding the company's exploration and development activities, what is it that I suppose you do differently than Ariana's peers?
So one of the most important things that we very much pride ourselves on is our use of technology, not just using bits of technology and kit to our advantage, but actually being an integral part of the development in use of those technologies. So I mentioned remote sensing a little earlier, but when we got started with Ariana back in the early 2000s, one of the first things we did was we funded a research program at Imperial College, and that research program was actually expanding the development of remote sensing technology with a very specific focus towards the type of mineral deposit that we were seeking in Turkey. And using that research, we were able to peg our very first exploration licenses in the country, some of which we still retain. They went on to become successful discoveries. And they also highlighted a number of other things that we've still got our eyes on today. So it's very much being a part of the development of the technology that we pride ourselves on. And another interesting development, much more recent, is our first use of geotech box scan technology. So we're one of the first in the world to be using this technology, and it's a platform used for analyzing drill core. That was what it was designed for originally, or rock chip, RC chip type material, and scanning that with a whole variety of techniques simultaneously. So laser scanning, laser profiling, magnetic susceptibility measurements, XRF measurements, and photography, very detailed digital photography, among other things. So yes, we are one of the first in the world. We were one of the founding sponsors of the development of that technology, which actually comes out of the UK. And at least in that hemisphere of the world, we're the only one using it at the moment. So all of these things add up to developing a unique capability. And I think that philosophy, as well as the use of the actual technologies, that has enabled us to achieve some of the lowest gold discovery costs per ounce anywhere in the world. I mean, we've been very, very efficient users of shareholder capital at the end of the day. We've been very successful in turning that capital into discoveries.
In February 2021, Ariana announced the formalization of the expanded Zenit joint venture with Oslington. What have they brought to the joint venture party, and how have the assets within the joint venture progressed as a result?
Yeah, Oslington have been absolutely instrumental in a number of different ways. Putting things very simply, I have mentioned a little earlier the additional capital that was injected into the Salinbas project company. So that was $8 million of additional cash that just went straight in, that we're now drawing down on to use in our drilling programs and so on at Salinbas. But in addition to that, their support for all the additional exploration that's been going on across all of the projects, so Kiziltepe and Tyson, so those big drilling programs that I've been talking about. I mean, in total, we've drilled 36,000 meters of drilling over the last couple of years, that represents 40% of the total drilling ever drilled across our projects in Turkey. So just in the last 2 years, 2 years out of 17, has been drilled in the last 2-year period, and that's entirely down to the way that we've changed the sort of the emphasis, I think, within the venture company, with the addition of Oslington. They, on their side, they have a very capable exploration geologist leading the charge. He comes after a very long career, very successful career with Tek Kaminko in Turkey. So he's brought all of his expertise onto the Oslington side of the venture. And I should also say that it's not just entirely down to exploration. They're also bringing a huge amount of expertise and capability when it comes to project permitting. And we've seen the success of that in the case of getting the Tavsan project through the EIA successfully, and then on through the forestry permitting process. So all of that was done in the course of the last couple of years as well. And likewise with the very successful receipt of the forestry permits that I mentioned at Salinbas. So I mean, they're fantastic partners to have as our Prosia.
Outside of the joint venture, Ariana is looking to explore other prospect regions in Turkey. What are the main reasons for this, and why is Ariana in a better position than its peers to discover new resources in Turkey?
Yeah, so we are in a better position than our peers, primarily because there's no company, it's maybe being a bit boastful, but I think I can say it. There's no other company in the world that has the data sets that we have over Eastern Turkey in particular. And they're data sets that we're continually augmenting through our work in remote sensing, in geophysics, and so on. So we've developed not only our own in-house data sets over the years, but obviously we've been putting a lot more emphasis on it in more recent times. But also we have the benefit of the Newmont exploration databases for Turkey. So Newmont spent about 20 years exploring for gold in the country. and we have access to all of their data. So that really sort of places us on a fairly unique pedestal for exploring in Eastern Turkey in particular. And we want to leverage that advantage. So we know that the exploration and development programs on our other assets that we hold 23.5% of through our joint venture with Prosia and Özaltın, they're being handled very well, and we're contributing to those programs where needed. But our exploration team also has the capacity to now start looking further afield. And we've targeted Eastern Turkey very specifically because it is so underexplored compared to other parts of the country. So you have this combination of underexplored terrain, less, I would say less, fewer explorers have actually gone in there to do very serious work over the last couple of decades. So there are lots of openings. When you look at the license distribution across Turkey, there are more openings available in Eastern Turkey than there are in the West. The West is just chock-a-block with licenses. You can't really touch it anymore. So that's the opportunity. And then we have our capabilities through the database, through the team, and so on. And we want to maximize the use of all of those tools, so to speak, to make the next big discovery in the country, which we feel is going to be located in Eastern Turkey.
Over the last 5 years, Ariana's share price has significantly outperformed many of its peers, even taking into account the special dividend that has been paid in line with the expanded joint venture. However, largely driven by its current market conditions, shares have been under pressure more recently, and probably, like I say, most other miners as well. Other than an improvement in the market, what do you think will drive the share price over the medium and long term?
Okay, I could answer that in a somewhat retrospective way. And one way of looking at it is to see how our share price has performed since 2016. Now, why I select that particular year is that's the year prior to Kiziltepe going operational. So it sets an effective baseline for the company. Now, our share price has performed fantastically over that period from 2016, not only in terms of real share price appreciation, but also in terms of return to investors. You know, we've paid out now £7.74 million in dividend to our shareholders. So if you couple the dividend to the share price appreciation over that time, you're looking at a 370% increase in investment return. Now, one of the key reasons for that is the fact that we got Kiziltepe successfully into operation in 2017, in the early part of that year. And as that project demonstrated itself, and as we successfully paid down approaching $50 million worth of bank debt for the construction of the mine, as that debt was paid down and the mine continued to perform, and I should add that we've always beaten guidance year on year. We've always produced more gold and silver than guidance forecast. So we developed or enhanced confidence, so to speak, in market eyes. And along with that, the share price appreciated. So that's the case for one mine. Now, in terms of catalyst for next leg up, so to speak, well, obviously it's going to be Tavsan. Tavsan is in construction. We're planning to get that into production. And we expect that that also will be reflected in similar ways into our share price going forward. And then longer term, I mean, who knows where we end up with a huge project like Salinbas. Salinbas is a different kettle of fish because it is a big project. You know, there's 1.5 million ounces there across Salinbas and the Ardla porphyry. So we have to treat that one differently. That's going to take more time, obviously. But through successive developments of this kind of project, and you know, the plan would be to keep increasing the size of the project. We're certainly doing that in the case of Kiziltepe to Tavsan. Tavsan will end up being a larger project than Kiziltepe. So we always need to do, another leg up. So I think that the market will soon appreciate that. It's taken its time, but I think the market will appreciate it soon enough.
Yeah. And lastly, what's the outlook over the next sort of 6 to 12 months? And is there anything else that you would like to add and tell our audience about?
Yeah, I mean, we are all guns blazing on the exploration front in Turkey. All those drilling programs underway across all projects, all advanced projects at least. The Project Leopard exploration opportunities that we're identifying in eastern Turkey. We hope to be able to say more about that in the coming months. So I should also add, because I forgot to mention that Project Leopard in eastern Turkey is 100% owned by Ariana. So that's got nothing to do with our joint venture with Presea and Özaltın. So we've got a lot of news flow coming down the pipeline in Turkey specifically, but we do have those other ventures that we haven't had the opportunity to touch on. Western Tethyan Resources in Kosovo. Western Tethyan secured 300 kilometers squared of highly prospective ground for porphyry, copper, gold, and epithermal style mineralization in the country. We're also, we have an option on the Slivova gold project in Kosovo with Avrupa Minerals. So we're working on the due diligence of that currently. So that's another project, a relatively advanced project that we're planning to add to the stable if all checks out. That Western Tethyan Resources is also a partnership, a 5-year strategic partnership with Newmont Corporation. Newmont became about 4% shareholders in Ariana. They put in $2.5 million into the company. We're utilizing those funds to continue the development of Western Tethyan Resources in particular. Apart from that, we've also got a 50% interest in Venus Minerals. Venus is focused entirely on copper gold volcanogenic massive sulfide deposits in Cyprus. The largest project within that portfolio is the Magellan project with 17 million tons of copper, varying in grade from about 0.45 to 1.1% copper, with additional gold, silver, zinc as well. Venus also has an option on a joint venture, a 50-50 joint venture with a Cypriot company, construction company, in fact, with interests in the Apliki mine. The Apliki copper deposit is located in the Lefke area of Cyprus. And it is one of the most, well, it is actually the most advanced copper assets in Cyprus. It's fully permitted. It's got a processing plant and a solvent extraction electro-wind plant that was previously operational at the nearby Skouritissa mine. That's ready to go to be reinstalled. So we're looking to do further work on that as Venus is progressed towards an IPO. We've had an IPO in plan for Venus for much of the last year, but markets have not been conducive, certainly since the second half of the year. So we pulled back on the IPO for a bit, but we're planning to re-engage when the markets improve, which they should do, I think, in 2023. So there's a lot going on in a number of areas immediately outside of Turkey. But one last point I should make is the Asgard Metals Fund in Australia that's taken minority but strategic positions in a number of junior companies, one of which is listed, Panther Metals, that's listed on the ASX. I'm also non-executive chairman of Panther Metals, and Panther's gone on in the last 12 months to make a very major nickel cobalt discovery in the Laverton region of Western Australia. So there's 70.6 million tons at 0.7% nickel plus additional cobalt on that project, and it's strategically well located because it's not far from the Glencore Murrin operations. So we're looking for Panther to continue the exploration and development of that particular asset. So there's a lot on the go. We're excited by it all, and I think there's plenty in the news flow pipeline yet to come.
Yeah. Kerim, thank you very much for your time. You certainly have got a lot going on there. Obviously, a lot in Turkey, plus obviously Kosovo as well. So really appreciate your time in sharing your story and give us an update on Ariana Resources and what you're doing in Turkey. And it certainly looks like a developing jurisdiction. Like you said, 20 years ago, there wasn't much happening, and in 20 years, you've obviously done a lot of mining there. So wish you well for the remainder of the year and next year, obviously going into next year. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platforms you and the company on?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Rob. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and glad to be able to go through all those points. I think in terms of reaching out to us, I mean, we're actually attending Mines and Money coming up week after next. I'll be giving a presentation virtually during the conference, but the rest of the team will be there in person. We're going to be at the Hilton next door to Mines and Money, so anyone wants to come down, query the management. We'll also have our 2 resource geologists on standby as well. So anyone that wants to ask any questions, we're obviously very approachable. Any other questions can be directed to our PR consultancy, Yellow Jersey, in the first instance, and they'll relay anything relevant to us accordingly. And then lastly, in terms of social media, I mean, we're pretty active on social media, Twitter in particular. We kind of enjoy twittering, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn often a little bit more detailed information via there. YouTube, we've had a number of new short clips, videos that we've been preparing in the background through this year that we're making available now in the run up to Mines and Money. So a number of those have actually been tweeted as well. So there's a lot of information out there on what we've been up to recently.
Yeah, certainly. And we can include those in the show notes as well, all of those social media links as well. And if you're attending Mines and Money, please obviously reach out to Ariana Resources and their team. And if you've got any questions, obviously the team can answer. And if you've got any questions for Kerim, obviously contact him via the social media networks. And I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. And I suppose there's a little bit of education there around mining in Turkey. And obviously, Kerim mentioned how well the country has developed their mining as a jurisdiction. So please share this episode amongst the mining community. Those that are in Europe, please share this episode, and obviously around the world as well. So, hope you enjoyed that episode, and until next time, happy mining.